Central Bank Governor Tan Sri Dr. Zeti Akhtar Aziz to make the approval happen.
According to Leisner's testimony, he, however, could not independently verify if a bribe was indeed paid. Leisner is the star witness in the trial of ex-colleague Roger Ng, who is charged with bribery and money laundering linked to 1MDB. Last November, the MACC revealed that at least 65 million ringgit in 1MDB-linked funds recovered from Singapore were held by a company belonging to Zeti's husband, Taufik Aiman. In March last year, Taufik and his two sons admitted to knowing about the money and being the beneficial owners of the accounts. Meanwhile, Dato Sri Najib Razak, in a Facebook post, refuted the testimony of Tim Leisner that a meeting between Najib and former Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein culminated in an agreement to secure jobs for 3 of Najib's children at the bank in return for substantial business dealings. Najib said none of his children have ever worked or been offered jobs at Goldman Sachs. In the end, Leisner told the US court that he just helped Najib's daughter get a job at TPG Capital in Hong Kong.
A viral video on social media showing students experiencing adverse reactions after receiving COVID-19 vaccine is fake news. The Health Ministry explained that the video was old and related to a gas poisoning incident in Pasir Gudang, Johor in 2019.
The ministry urged the public not to spread any false information that can cause panic and confusion. Meanwhile, the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency (NPRA) said that out of the total 57 adverse events following immunization reports involving children aged 5 to 11, only 1 is serious. The adverse events reported included acute stress response, fever, and shortness of breath.
According to the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency or NPRA, half of reported deaths among COVID-19 booster recipients have nothing to do with the vaccines. Director Dr. Roshayati Muhammad Sani says those cases made up 22 out of a total of 44 cases.
She said the remaining cases are still under investigation. Out of over 65 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines administered nationwide, a total of 25,211 adverse events following immunization reports have been received by NPRA. Dr. Roshayati said 93% of overall cases were categorized as not serious and are usually resolved within 1 or 2 days.
Hospitals across the country have reported an increase in pediatric COVID-19 admissions. President of the Association of Private Hospitals Malaysia, Dr. Kuljit Singh, says although the cases are mild, the number has jumped sharply in the past 2 weeks.
The private hospitals do not see an increase in the pediatric patients as much as we see in the government setting. But having said that, we have a lot of patients, pediatric patients who are diagnosed to be positive, and they are not in any complication for the time being, but the numbers have increased lately in the last 2 weeks.
He attributed the rise in hospitalizations involving children to an increase in social activities and the Omicron variant.
The current variant is very infectious, and it's probably spreading very fast in families and also in the community. Hence, the kids, the children are also getting infected at a very fast rate. Perhaps with the social activity and the interaction has increased when you compare to what it was last year. But having said that, I think it is still very much under control. We believe that vaccination is important, including for the children between the 5 years to 11 years of age. And the main reason of vaccinating is just like what we have seen in adults. It will definitely protect any individual, whether pediatric or adult, in getting into complication of COVID. We have seen that in adults, and I think we will also the similar situation in children, so that we can avoid the occurrence of the MIS complication where you have a multi organ failure in children. So I think it is important the children should get their vaccination done as soon as possible.
The Cabinet today agreed to immediately sign the MOU on Indonesian domestic workers. Human Resources Minister Datuk Sri M. Saravanan says the date of the signing will be jointly decided by both countries.
Saravanan said the MOU will benefit both countries, especially workers who are in need of employment, as well as local employers who have been facing difficulties in obtaining the services of foreign domestic maids. The MOU was inked for the first time on May 13, 2006 in Bali, and subsequently the protocol to amend the MOU was signed again on May 31, 2011 in Bandung, but it has already expired on May 30, 2016.
More in a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Selamat datang ke Yang Mana Satu Idaman You. Jika anda ada RM109, mana satu yang anda mahu? 90 saluran Astro atau internet laju? Persoalannya, kenapa you kena pilih kalau semuanya ada dengan bundle Jimat, internet laju dan 90 saluran Astro hanya RM109 sebulan sahaja? Kan? Call 03-7481-3000 sebelum promosi habis.
Welcome back. On to developments in Ukraine. Western leaders are warning that Russia has put in motion a plan to launch a full invasion. The Ukrainian government today urged its citizens living in Russia to leave the country immediately as tensions escalate. Up to 3 million Ukrainians are believed to live in Russia, and many people have family in both countries. Ukraine's top security official says a state of emergency is to be declared in the country lasting 30 days following approval by the parliament. Meanwhile, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has also called up some of the country's military reservists as the threat of a Russian invasion grows, but says there is no need for a full military mobilization yet. In a defiant tone against sanctions from the West, Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow is ready for diplomatic solutions, but stressed that the country's interests were non-negotiable. In a televised address, Putin said the country's national security interests are top priority, and Russia will continue to strengthen its military in the face of what he called a difficult international situation. The United States, the European Union, Britain, Australia, Canada and Japan have all announced sanctions against Russia, targeting banks and wealthy individuals. The United Kingdom announced that it will provide Ukraine with further military support, including defensive weapons. The West warned that it was ready to step up sanctions against Russia if Putin adds more fuel to the Ukraine crisis. The UK Foreign Secretary warned Putin that the international community will respond accordingly.
He has essentially violated Ukrainian sovereignty. That is why we have put together a strong response with our international allies, with the G7, to target key oligarchs close to Putin, to target banks, to put in territorial sanctions against those breakaway regions. We have not yet seen a full-scale invasion, but we are very clear that if President Putin escalates, we, the international community, will escalate our sanctions.
Thailand will ease its COVID-19 requirements for international travelers. Starting from next month, fully vaccinated travelers will only be required to undergo one RT-PCR test upon arrival, followed by a self-administered antigen rapid test after 5 days. However, they still need to take an RT-PCR test within 72 hours before traveling to Thailand and spend their first night in hotel quarantine or other quarantine facilities. Additionally, the Thai government will also reduce the amount of travel insurance coverage from $50,000 to $20,000 starting from March 1st. Based on latest data, more than 300,000 travelers have applied for entry to Thailand, with the majority of travelers from Russia, Germany, France, the UK and Singapore. Hong Kong is preparing to test its entire population of nearly 8 million in March. The city is grappling with its worst COVID-19 outbreak, with hospitalizations and isolation centers reaching its limit. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said that the population would be tested 3 times in March. She expects testing capacity to be boosted to over 1 million a day. Lam had also reiterated Hong Kong's zero COVID tolerance, which meant anyone who tested positive must be sent to isolation centers or hospitals. Meanwhile, over in South Korea, Prime Minister Kim Woo-kyung urged people to not panic over a steep surge in new COVID cases. Daily infections breached 170,000, the highest since the start of the pandemic. Kim said serious cases and deaths are at manageable levels and that there was no need to fear about the numbers of new cases as in the past. Deaths have slowly ticked up, reaching a near record high of 99 on Tuesday. But South Korean authorities say real-world data shows people infected with the Omicron variant are nearly 75% less likely to develop serious illness or die than those who get infected with the Delta variant. According to a recent study, around 56% of nearly 1,000 people who died in South Korea from COVID over a 5-week period were either unvaccinated or had received only 1 dose of vaccine. Whether it is the immediate or long-term economic recovery is crucial to job security, full employment and better salaries. Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests about the public policy options confronting us. And that is all we have for you on Awani tonight. For all the latest news updates, head on to astroawani.com and the Astro Awani app. Thank you for watching. I'm Cynthia Ng. Good night.